So, for those of you who don't know Babula, I think you all do though. Most of you.
There's a few here.
There's a few you don't, yeah. Well, you may not know that Babula and I have been doing an astrology podcast for 4 years now.
We started in 2020.
Yeah, every 2 weeks, every new moon and full moon. Yeah, which is just continues.
Yeah.
So, and I've learned a lot from her, that's for sure. Astrologically and in other ways too. So, and I've known Babula for many years, or I've known of you for many years and done some of your classes. I think I got to know about you about 35 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So I'm very excited. So I'm glad I know you'll enjoy this because I know I will. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too.
So without any further ado, take it away.
Thank you, Sheryl. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. Sheryl said to me a couple of months ago, she said, "Oh, would you come and talk to the Strange Encounters group about death and dying and NDEs and so on?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to, because I find those things really interesting." Somehow it's morphed into something else. And then I don't even know how it happened. Somehow it turned into me starting to look into people having experiences outside of the normal related to ETs, UFOs, including near-death experiences and all sorts of things. And I thought, well, why don't we just call it Strange Encounters, which is the name of this group. And it's opened up a whole new area of astrological interest for me. So I feel like I've just popped a new little bubble and I've gone, oh. So this feels like the beginning of a whole new field of investigation for me, astrologically speaking. Because over the years I've gone through different periods where I've explored different themes through the lens of astrology. And now this one's really got my attention and interest. And I must disclose something to you all. Like Sheryl said, she's been enjoying my astrology. Well, I've been learning lots from Sheryl as well. So there is a cross-fertilisation going on here. I've never seen a UFO. I've not encountered an ET. I've not been abducted by a craft. I haven't had a near-death experience. But I'm open to all of that. So I need to disclose that straight up. I'm not someone who's had those direct experiences. I've had other kinds of spiritual experiences, but not of that kind, right? So this is hanging around with Sheryl these last 4 years and other people like her. I've been exposed to so much more. And I've been doing my own, listening to various podcasts and videos and so on about these things. So I was never closed-minded about it. It just wasn't my area of interest or direct experience. So I was like, of course there's ETs, and of course there's other star systems and other races beyond Earth. Of course there is. So this has really got me very fascinated. And so Sheryl was sending some birth details of various well-known people who've had experiences, and I was digging around. I already had a couple in my file. Astrologers collect birth data. So watch out if you happen to mention your birth data. It goes into the recording. Like we're attuned to birth dates and so on. So I now actually have a file in my astrology program called Strange Encounters. Just popping things in there. And I can see that's going to get subdivided into few different areas. But there's a certain crossover, I think. So the astrology of it, I kind of knew what to look for, and that's been confirmed in my research up to date in the last few months. But I've also noticed a few other things that I've gone, oh, that's interesting, that make me think about things in another way. So, you know, to research something astrologically, you want a lot of charts and you want lots of stories to sort of see what are the patterns. So astrologers are always looking for patterns. What's the pattern? What's the certain thing that keeps repeating? What am I seeing here that makes sense with whatever is the issue we're exploring?
UFO researchers too, looking for patterns.
Looking for patterns, yeah. So I feel like I'm in the early stages of it, so I'm very happy and excited to share what I've seen so far. And I'm guessing that some of you here in the room know pretty much nothing about astrology. Can I just have a bit of an indication of that? Or maybe you all have a bit of astrology. No, you don't? Yeah, it's a few of you with shaking your heads. Okay. So a lot of this, I'll keep it really simple. What I hope that those of you who don't know astrology, I feel to say yet, will at least see, you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about, and hopefully you'll go away with something that's making sense to you. For others who are a bit more astrologically literate or learning, I think you'll find this very interesting. I hope you all find it interesting. So, oh, hang on, I think that skipped a slide. No? Okay, no, that's right. So that's just an image of the sun and all the planets of our solar system. Mercury, Venus, the Earth with the moon going around the Earth, Mars, and then we're going further out into the solar system. There's big Jupiter, Saturn with the rings, and out beyond Saturn is Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. Okay, so each of the planets in astrology represents a certain archetypal energy, right? And they're moving around the sun at different rates of speed because they're different distances away from the sun, and they're moving through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Some of them take years and years and years to move through a sign. Others are whizzing around really quickly because they're really close to the sun. And so we're tracking the movements, and we're tracking what's happening as the planets are moving and making contact with each other and changing signs and so on. And so I had a sense of, if we're talking about phenomenon outside the normal, what planets would represent that? Well, what planets would represent that are the planets beyond Saturn. So historically, up until the 1700s, the only known planets were the 7 planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, and the moon. Because you couldn't see anything else past that. In the 1700s, Uranus was discovered, and that opened up a whole phenomenal new energetic on planet Earth. Things changed really fast, and I won't go into the whole story of what happened, but it was literally a breakthrough of human consciousness. All of a sudden there was a shockwave that went through the scientific community. Oh my God, who knew there's another planet? All the big revolutions were going on in the world at the time. Scientific revolution, industrial revolution. It was a phenomenal time of change, really fast. So there's been a breakthrough into the normal idea of reality. Following century, in the 1800s, Neptune was discovered. That opened up a whole new spiritual realm. So you're getting psychics, people going to India and coming back with all this Indian and Tibetan spiritual knowledge, bringing it to the West. People having seances, and and things like medications and things that could knock patients out when they're in the middle of a war and cutting off someone's leg. Finally they've got something to knock them out. So lots of things were happening. And then in 1930, Pluto was discovered. So these outer planets, literally in our own chart and in our experience of reality, take us out beyond the realms of what we consider to be normal 3D reality, right? And so we would expect that these planets are going to be pretty active and pretty significant in the charts of people who tend to have a lot of these phenomenal experiences. And also at the time when some major events like that are occurring. And so it is. So let's have a look. So which planets and or zodiac signs are most likely to indicate strange encounters or paranormal experiences? So paranormal, just beyond the normal, what we regard as normal. Now what each one of us here regard as normal will be very particular to us, but you wouldn't be here today if you weren't open to paranormal, you know, at least the idea of that. I mean, even talking astrology isn't, not everyone comes to an astrologer or is interested in astrology. A lot more are now. It's really taking off now, which is exciting. When I started years and years and years and years ago, I was very careful who I even mentioned that I was interested in astrology. You know, I didn't even say that to everybody because you're a bit weird. You all know what that's like, don't you, to be considered a bit weird? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's not translating the symbols. Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Okay. So the sign of Aquarius, which in my astrology font would translate that capital K into the symbol for the planet, the sign Aquarius, it's not done that. The crossover hasn't happened. Probably just because you don't have the font in your computer.
That's right, yeah.
We'll have to remedy that, won't we?
We will.
Okay. So the sign of Aquarius, which is ruled by the planet Uranus, right? One of the outer planets. The first one past Saturn. So this sign of Aquarius, which connects us to the bigger picture, to the cosmos, the universe, the stars, beyond the earth, mind, higher knowledge, and group consciousness and humanity, understandably is going to be inclined to have experiences beyond the normal. Many of you in the room will have significant activation of the sign of Aquarius in your birth chart. Doesn't mean you're an Aquarian sun. You could have Aquarius rising, Aquarius moon on the midheaven, or just a bunch of planets in the sign of Aquarius. And the ruling planet Uranus. Uranus might be showing up strongly in your chart. Yep. Now Uranus, see it says T there. I love cartoons like this. Why do Earthlings never use telepathy? Because they've got a lot to hide from each other. It's true. So Uranus is an energy of shock and shock waves and sudden events that seem to happen out of nowhere, totally unexpected, that change your reality in an instant. Really, like an earthquake, bolt of lightning, a sudden encounter with a UFO or an ET. Right? A sudden experience, completely unexpected, that is completely out of left field that you never even considered would ever happen to you. These are Uranian moments. And it disrupts the trajectory of your life. Any of you here, if you've had those experiences, if you remembered the first time, it may have come as a shock, which would have changed your perception of reality very quickly. Yeah. And so then your mind, because this is a mind energy, your mind is blown open to the possibility of another reality. Unusual experiences, paranormal telepathy, earthquakes, lightning, it's energy. So I can't even show you the symbol because the symbol for Aquarius is two wavy lines, like lines of energy. Uranian Aquarian people feel like they are misfits, outsiders, non-conformists, rebels. True? True. Feel like you don't quite fit. But then when you come together like this, you go, oh, these are my people. Right? With my brothers and sisters. Space, the stars, the cosmos, insight, revelations, flash. People who are naturally very psychic, in my experience, because I've looked into this over the years very much, it's usually a combination of strong placements of Uranus and Neptune both. Because Uranus opens up the mind, yeah, to receiving information. Even the symbol looks like an antenna. You know, beep, beep, beep. Information's coming in. It's coming in from beyond. Intelligence. Uranian Aquarian people are often, you know, of the genius type, yeah, really intelligent, and they often think very differently. Awakening, consciousness, liberation, profits, future. So we're beyond normal, mundane reality and perception. At its highest level, Uranus represents the development of inspiration, inner vision, and enlightenment, and the evolution of human consciousness. Now we are now entering the Aquarian age, right? So that's why all of this is accelerating, and it's very early days. We haven't seen anything yet, right? It's going to be big. Now the next planet and sign that we're going to look at is Pisces. By the way, Uranus is the second last sign. We started Aries, and Pisces is the last sign. And its ruling planet, Neptune. So these are paranormal experiences that are more of the mystical kind. Not so much of mental consciousness, right? It's feeling, it's transcendent, it's a sense of merging. You might be someone who maybe has never seen an angel, but you know the angels, right? It could be something like that. Or it could be in deep meditation or sitting with an enlightened guru and just you disappear into a realm way beyond here. It might be profoundly silent, but tears are falling down your face, right? It's a different energy. But again, and it's the realm of dreams and imagination. What's happening in your dream if you're meditating? Things open up for which you have no explanation. And you could come back and somebody might say, wow, I could see a lot was happening. What was happening? And go, I can't explain it. I can't speak about it. I can't find any words. Because you can't. So this planet's very much a part of intuition too. And we could say, if someone has an experience beyond this reality, someone might say it's just your imagination, because Neptune rules imagination. But then who's to say imagination isn't just another reality? Right? Who's to say it's not actually real? And how do you prove it? Well, you can't. It's an experience. Usually, in my experience with this one, when you feel it deeply in your soul, in your heart, in your being, and there's an emotional response, a felt response, you know it's real, right? That's how you can have that sense of it's real for you, and you feel changed afterwards. But it's mysterious, right? So mystical experiences beyond 3D reality, dreams, illusions, imaginings. You know, what's happening when these really incredibly gifted musicians or artists, when they're in that space, something is coming through them. They open up, something comes through. And I remember Paul McCartney said this, he's got a very strong Neptune placement. And I think it was Let It Be, that he woke up in the night and that whole song was just there. And he picked up his guitar, he played it and he wrote it down. And he went to the Beatles the next day in the studio and he said, listen to this, I want you to tell me if I've plagiarised this from someone. I don't know where this song came from. That's Neptune. Yep. Neptune experiences, we can feel like we're falling apart, we're unraveling, our reality is disintegrating, it's dissolving. That can feel a little bit scary, like Uranian shocks can feel a bit scary. We're not on solid ground, we're not on familiar ground anymore. Experiences of loss, of disappearance, of grief and sorrow. We're in the realm of feelings here. Release from this physical reality to a more transcendent spiritual reality. States of bliss, ecstasy and transcendence, the mystery. Attached to nothing, connected to everything. You know, those states of oneness that have no words at all. So Neptune sensitizes us to subtle vibrations and opens us to invisible transcendental planes of consciousness. See, these are words that try to explain something. Subtle vibrations, invisible, transcendental planes, melting, dissolving, inspirational or mystical, pure feeling. Through its rays we experience the dissolving of the boundaries of our mundane reality and our sense of separateness from each other, all of life in the universe. Right now, all this year, Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces, the last degree of the last sign of the whole zodiac. And there is a great deal of this energy going on in the field, and people are experiencing it in all sorts of ways. It's kind of a perfect time to be talking about this, you know, opening us up to these other realities and being able to talk about it. The other sign and planet, I mean, the whole chart, and there are all the signs can, I'm going to say that all the signs and all the planets will be involved, but these are the ones that really speak to those experiences beyond, right? Scorpio, the planet of the sign of death and dying, and intense, quite often traumatic experiences. So death and rebirth. So we would expect that people who are having near-death experiences, you'd be seeing in their chart significant placements of Scorpio or Pluto or transits of Pluto at the time of an experience like that. So Pluto, the ruling planet of Scorpio, governs intense traumatic experiences. Now, some people, if they encounter, if they're abducted, for example, right? We've heard some horror stories. They may be extremely deeply traumatized by that. So there's a Uranian component to them being, you know, taken by an extraterrestrial race, for example. But, and this is where you have to look at the individual chart. Different people will experience and integrate a similar experience in different ways, because we're all different, right? The underworld, ghosts and ghouls, you know, people who see things like that, you know, who walk through cemeteries and they can see all these energies. That's more of a Pluto Scorpio kind of quality. People who are mediums, yeah, you get a combination of Scorpio and probably Pisces and Neptune. They're open to those other realms. Death and near-death experiences, and intense experiences that leave us permanently changed. Powerful, life-changing experiences. Transformation and empowerment. I'm no longer who I was. I'm not yet who I'm becoming. So these are the planets, and these signs represent energies of evolution and growth and transformation, and we are changed by these experiences. Pluto, powerful transforming experiences. You'll see the symbols in the charts that I'm going to show you, of death, sex. Sometimes sex is involved. Yep. Birth, you know, birth is a powerful experience. Issues around power, abuse of power, trauma, crisis, pain, grief, loss, and ultimately out of that comes regeneration and new life. It's a very intense, potent energy. Through this planet we come to learn that something must die and disintegrate before there can be new life, and that what dies is what ultimately is no longer of use or value. It's a deeply evolutionary process. So these are the energies that we're going to be expecting to show up in the charts of people who, I mean, there are some people, just in the bit of research I've been doing, his whole life seems to be like a series of experiences like this. For some people it might have been one experience, but a big one, yeah? I also want to mention a planet Chiron. I didn't put a slide in, but I am seeing that Chiron's often important, because Chiron was only discovered in 1977. And he's often, we think of him as a bridge between these two realities, because he sits between, in the sky, he's orbiting between Saturn and the outer planets. So I am noticing Chiron showing up as well. Oh no, that doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a bunch of letters. But just, I'll basically explain. This is like an image I had last year, and I thought, oh, that works, that makes sense. I'll make a sort of a graphic of that. The square, the S represents the planet Saturn, the Lord of boundaries. You know, you go so far and no further. This is the paradigm that you've been given. You operate within here. All the inner planets inside of Saturn, you know, between Saturn and the Sun. This is my personal reality. This is what I know. This is what I see. This is what I experience. This is what I've been told. This is what I'm taught. And then the outer planets, T, U, and V, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they, in the chart, when one of those makes contact, hits Saturn, or directly makes contact with an inner planet, and that's what you see in the chart, that's what we call the aspects. You know that whatever that inner planet represents as someone's personal reality, it's up for transformation in this lifetime in some way, and so there's going to be experiences that facilitate that. That's very cute, isn't it?
Yeah. For those who don't know astrology, it doesn't make any difference. That's a good point.
That's true. So astrology is a language, and it's like a hieroglyphic coded language, and once you get familiar with the symbols, you can look at a symbol of a planet and it speaks volumes to you, like someone who can read hieroglyphics in Egypt. We're surrounded by symbols. You know, you draw a love heart, you know what it is. You know, if you're a Christian, the cross has great meaning to you. So we're very familiar with symbols, they're not unknown to us. So let's talk about this topic. Let's go here. What we call ETs, UFOs, beings from star systems, planets, races beyond Earth. And I'm sure all of you in this room, or most of you in this room, many of you in this room will know far more than I, and will have had your own direct experiences. I know some of you have been coming to Sheryl's Strange Encounters talks probably for a long time. I know Sheryl knows one hell of a lot, like what a font of information. So what immediately comes to mind would be the sign of Aquarius and the planet Uranus, but the other planets absolutely can be part of the story, because everyone's experience, as I said before, will be unique, and the way they integrate it and then what happens to them afterwards with that will be unique to them as well. Some people may shut down and never tell a soul, go to their grave with what happened. Others, it becomes their life work, you know, to share whatever that experience was about. So, whenever I present something, I go down this tunnel of research, and I can't help myself, and one thing leads to another, and I'm away, and that ends up producing like hundreds of slides. So there's a lot here. Some of them I'll whiz through. Carl Jung, who I've long been interested in because, you know, the great psychologist, they don't even study in modern psychology schools. They don't even bring Carl Jung into their training, which is just beyond shocking to me. When I discovered that, I remember asking someone who was studying psychology, I said, "Oh, when to get to Carl Jung?" She said, no, we don't do that. He was a mystic. He was an astrologer. He had all kinds of experiences. He was very open to the idea of ETs and UFOs. He had a near-death experience, you know, just an extraordinary being. And he had some theories, just some ideas that he was postulating about this. Does not seek to validate the physical existence of UFOs as material objects, but is instead interested in what their appearance reveals about the state of the collective subconscious at the time they're perceived. He's very much about the subconscious. For Jung, accounts of flying saucers and UFOs reflect deep archetypes and symbolic motives, suggesting a manifestation of collective concerns, anxieties, or aspirations. He interprets them as modern symbols emerging from the collective subconscious, expressing a sort of technological saviour in the face of the nuclear age's anxieties and the social upheavals of the 20th century. Interesting. Suggesting that encounters with UFOs could be manifestations of humanity's collective psyche, materialising subconscious contact into the physical world. Could be interpreted as signs of the evolution of the human collective consciousness, as our understanding of and interaction with these phenomena deepens. This could catalyse a shift in how we perceive ourselves in the universe, fostering an evolutionary leap in human consciousness. And to me, that's the point of all of this. If you have an experience and more people are having experiences, and eventually the whole of humanity is going to be exposed to this, are we talking to one hell of a shift in human consciousness or what? Like massive. It's already been happening, you know, ever since people started talking about this phenomenon, certainly since the 50s, and we know way back. You know, it starts to change people's awareness and way of thinking and sense of reality. So his chart, he has Aquarius rising. 3 degrees, Cheryl. Cheryl has Aquarius rising, very close to that. Yeah? The planet Uranus, so that's the symbol for Aquarius. That blue symbol over there near the sun is the circle with the dot in it. That's the planet Uranus, the ruling planet of Aquarius. So Uranus rules Aquarius, is actually the ruling planet of his chart. And there it is, very strong there, quite close to his sun. And Uranus, see the thick red line? Has what we call a square down, a very tight square down to his moon in Taurus. Now I started to notice in a lot of these charts things in Taurus. I'm going, what's Taurus got to do with this? And the more I thought about it, Taurus is a very practical, very grounded, very sensible earth sign. If there's any Taurians in the room, you'll know what I'm talking about. But here you are in this room, right? So as I started to notice this, and I put a green arrow to sort of indicate the Taurus, because many Taurians, if they heard this conversation, they'd be saying, oh, don't be stupid, that's ridiculous. That's not real, that couldn't possibly be real, right? So for many Taurians, reality is very 3D. It's this, it's physical, it's tangible, it's practical, it's logical. So what if, I think there's 2 possibilities here. If Taurus is showing up, this person is so embedded in 3D reality, but their soul is ready for a big wake up. So they have an experience that completely cracks open their reality. But the Taurus energy helps them to remain grounded with it. Yeah? So far that's what's making sense to me. Because I kept seeing Taurus. I'm going, this is very curious. I also think and this has just occurred to me in the last 24 hours, that in order to have these kinds of experiences that can be very shattering, someone needs to have a pretty good sense of groundedness in their own body, in their own reality, and in their physical body, in order to contain that and hold it. Because if you don't have a lot of earth in your chart, and I don't, and I wonder if that's why I haven't had these experiences. I don't know. It's just like, oh, that's curious. Because if you don't, and it happens to you perhaps when you're quite young, it could kind of send you a bit off the rails, which has probably happened to some people. And they could become psychotic, particularly with strong Uranus energy. Yeah? These are just thoughts, which I will keep exploring. Okay. Yes, so began to proliferate at the time of the Cold War. So we're talking about post-World War II in the 1950s, when reports of these phenomena are really starting to happen. It says their message may be interpreted as a manifestation of our concern about scientific and technological developments that could potentially lead to our destruction. Well, I think now we understand it, more about this now, but they're his thoughts back then. See, from an article or a book that he wrote called Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies. So he was interested in exploring these things. Some of you will know of this person. I don't speak French, so my apologies. Jacques Fabrice Vallée wrote a book called Passport to Magonia, From Folklore to Flying Saucers. Moon in Aquarius, right? So that shows up in his chart. He writes, UFOs are not merely physical objects, but rather interdimensional phenomena that defy our notions of time, space, and material reality. Johnny Mack, exploring the psychological, because there is a psychological aspect to this. Highlighting the profound effects. In his book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, he observes accounts of abductions by extraterrestrials often reveal transformative experiences that challenge the very foundations of individual and collective reality. Uranus is opposite his sun. That's a great example of what I mean about an outer planet making direct contact with an inner planet, especially the sun, which is our identity. Uranus, he was always destined to be someone who would either have an experience or at least be open to these ideas. Right? The famous Roswell event, and some of you here will know a great deal about that. I mean, I've been aware of it for decades, as most of us will have been. It first came into public awareness on July the 8th, 1987, because an article was written in the Roswell Daily Record very shortly after. I haven't been able to find a date of the crash, but I have a date of when it was first kind of acknowledged.
1947, you said 87.
Yeah.
Did I? 1947. I've read 47. Thank you. Yeah, 1947.
Nuclear bomb was that week.
Yes, that's right. Yes. There's a whole kind of backstory, isn't there, around that timing. Now, a weather balloon. So, as I was reading more about this, recently, you can delve into this and there's so many people written so much about it. The incident is a collection of events and myths surrounding... See, this is from Wikipedia, so it's going to have a Wikipedia... Slant. It's presentation. Collection of events and myths. So, well, there probably are a lot of myths as well, surrounding the crash of a United States Army Air Force's balloon. See, the United States Army is involved, of course, near Roswell, New Mexico, operated from the nearby Alagamordo Army Airfield and part of a top secret project. So now they're presenting it it was a weather balloon that was used to spy on Russia and what the Russians are doing. They announced their possession of a flying disc. This announcement made international headlines but was retracted within a day, obscuring the true purpose and source of the crashed balloon. The Army subsequently stated it was a conventional weather balloon. So this is just looking at this is set for the 2nd of July 1947. So what I noticed was, here's the planet Uranus, that dark blue one that looks like an antenna, that's the planet Uranus, at 23 degrees of Gemini. Gemini is all about information, communication, the media, what is said, what is not said. But the other thing, some of you who are learning astrology may recall or not, when Uranus was discovered in 1781, it was discovered at 24 degrees of Gemini. So this is actually kind of on the Uranus discovery degree. So astrologers, you start to see things like this, you go, there it is. And there's a Mars North Node conjunction in Gemini. So what are they saying about it? What story are they coming up with to explain this thing? And the Sun at 10 degrees of Cancer has a square to Neptune. So there's all these veils that are now laid over what happened. Was it a true... So my question is, was it a real ET UFO, or was it a United States military UFO? Will we ever know? And if it's my other question is, if it's a real ET UFO, how the hell would it crash?
Yeah,
That's what I always think.
Like what?
Advanced
Better than that, surely.
Exactly, advanced in so many ways, but I'll just
Yeah.
touch.
there was
So-
a video. There used to be a video that you could watch. The guy that actually discovered it had some of the materials,
Right.
and he said, "This isn't
Of this-
anything that I've ever
of
seen
this
before."
world. Yeah.
But he got shot down too.
I'm sure eventually all that will come out.
Yeah.
You may think, what the hell's Superman doing here? I used to love Superman as a kid. And, but Superman was an ET. He
Yes.
came from another planet. And when the movie came out, which is a great movie, the first movie, there's been many subsequent movies. This is the comic. There's Uranus conjunct Mercury, and it's in Taurus again. And when the movie came out, Uranus was over here in Scorpio, sitting exactly opposite Uranus in the chart of the birth of the comic, which is when now Superman is, here's Superman, right? This being from another planet.
And the nodes being in retrograde as well for the previous one?
The nodes are very often retrograde.
Are they?
Yeah, but well spotted anyway. Yeah, but they're very, very often retrograde, yeah. Now that's the movie that really, did this whole presentation of why he was sent from his home planet by his parents, because the planet was about to explode. What have I... No, that's it. That was just that one there. But it's just how these things come into human consciousness in the collective. Like everybody knows about Superman. How often do we think of him as being an ET? But he was, which is why he had these powers.
We just knew him as Christopher Reeve.
That's right. That's right. But I remember we used to watch the TV series way back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So exciting. Now, I've got a few examples of, to many of you, these will be very well-known examples of people who've had very well-reported encounters. Whitley Strieber, born 1945. I'll spend a bit of time on this because the story's very interesting, and we have dates. Astrologers love dates. Often I've come across an interesting story in person. I cannot find their date of birth anywhere, no matter how hard I look. So that's really frustrating. But when you have dates, you know, then we can really work with them. He went into hypnotherapy at 1986 because he had amnesia, he kept having all these dreams, like he didn't know what the hell was going on with him. What came out of hypnotherapy was that at the age of 12, he was taken. 10 years later, in 1967, he was missing for 24 hours of time, and in 1968, he was missing for an entire month. The memories caused him to run for years, moving erratically and having irrational memories. In 1985, twice, in October and December, he encountered lights and aliens along with his family in a secluded cabin in upstate New York. His experiences in the cabin and throughout his life were related in the 1987 movie Communion. After being examined by a neurologist and a psychiatrist and taking tests, including a lie detector, it was deemed he had no psychological or physiological disorder. Cheryl, you probably know lots about this story, probably a few of you do. So, that's a photograph of the gentleman now. So what I want to point out here, this is his birth chart. There's the planet Uranus in Gemini, conjunct Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini. This is very mind energy. He's a Gemini sun. There's Uranus and Mercury. I'm going to have to interpret the things here. At the age of 2, let's just get my... that's this one. Oh wait, no, see, Taurus rising. That arrow is Taurus rising. That's what it was. At the age of 2, Uranus, which moves really slowly, crossed over his Mercury and his Sun. And that was when he was first taken. He was very little. Uranus, he was born with Uranus really close to Mercury and the Sun, but as Uranus kept moving through the sky slowly, it hit, this is what we call transits. You've got a birth chart, moment frozen in time. That's your map, that's your birth chart. Planets keep moving. As they're moving around, they hit things in a hit. They come to that point, but I'll use that word because it's simple. They hit something in your own natal chart. They come to that exact, and things are happening, right? So you've got the chart, you're reading the chart, but then you're also reading what's happening at times, the timing of things throughout our whole life. And we can go back through the history of our life. Then, at the age of 12 in 1957, Uranus now has moved around and comes to his moon Pluto. Then in 1967-68, that's why I've colour-coded it, Uranus is now over here in Virgo, making a hard square aspect to his Sun, right? So Uranus is hitting, every time he's having this experience, Uranus, the planet that we would absolutely say governs our connection to the stars and the cosmos, and experiences beyond this reality that can be experienced as a shock, right? There's a direct hit of Uranus at every point. So this was a great example to use. And then at the age of 40 in 1985, Uranus is over here. That's the darker blue, making an opposition to Uranus, which happens to all of us when we're around 40, 41, 42. We have a Uranus opposition, and there's a big change happens in our life. And then the following year, he went into hypnosis when Uranus is opposite his Sun, and that was like a whole other level of awakening to what had actually happened, explaining why he was experiencing what he was experiencing. Right, so that's, now we all have Uranus transits all our life, all of us. They're times of change. It doesn't mean every time we have a Uranus transit we're going to have an encounter with an ET, right? Some people's life path, that's their destiny, that's their path. To be, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone who's able to bring this knowledge and experience and speaking. He's a Gemini. His path in life is to speak and communicate.
He's a writer too.
And he's a writer. So his job is, I've had these experiences and I need to tell people about it, right? That's not true. Someone can have an experience and it's not their role then to come back and talk to everyone about it. The role may be something else to do with that, but not this necessarily. So, and he has Taurus rising, you know, which gives him his sense of being in the body and in physical reality quite a lot of weight and strength, I think, which is really helpful. Okay.
I think, can I just say something about that?
Please.
It also helps him, because Taurus is, you know, it's stable and enduring,
Yeah.
you know, in its own way. So he endured a lot of criticism, ridicule, but that Taurus energy helped him stand up to it.
Yes, and be steadfast.
Yeah, steadfast, that's the word.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be strong. You know, there are many people, I'm thinking of David Icke, you know, like went through years of absolute, people would rip him down, like absolutely, he'd walk down the streets and people would be laughing at him and yelling at him for being a crazy. So they have to have, and many others, incredible inner strength in their own truth to be able to withstand that buffeting, you know. And Aquarius is the midheaven. See that arrow at the top of the chart? Yeah. So I just thought that was astrologically just a great example. Now this is the story of Travis Walton, who a number of you here will be very familiar with. And you know, I'll just go back to the story, but just to very quickly go through it. So this is on. So we've got a date, November the 5th, 1975. A 7-person logging cruise driving home after a long work day in the National Forest when they suddenly encounter a UFO, either seeing lights, and there's a UFO in front of them, or just over there. One of the men, 22-year-old Travis, who's really young, gets out of the truck to investigate. His crewmates are horrified when they witness a bolt of blue light flash from the alien ship that knocks Travis to the forest floor. Fearing that he's dead, they flee back to town and call the sheriff. When a search of the area turns up no sign of Travis, questions arise. Was he truly abducted by aliens, or did his co-workers murder him? There's no sign of him. Or have something to do with his disappearance, and concoct the UFO story to cover their tracks. And from Travis, he's been taken. I looked at the vague but reassuring forms of the doctors around me. Because remember, he's been knocked to the ground by this flash, which is a very Uranian moment. Lightning is governed by Uranus, literally. You know, lightning itself, that's Uranus. So there's a flash of blue light in that moment. Suddenly he's disappeared and he's taken up to a craft. But he's reassured because he sees doctors around him. Abruptly my vision cleared and the sudden horror of what I saw rocked me as I realised I was definitely not in a hospital. I was looking square into the face of a horrible creature with huge luminous brown eyes the size of quarters. I looked frantically around me. There were 3 of them. Hysteria overcame me instantly. That's one hell of a shock. He has no clue what's happened to him. So there he is as a young man. I don't have a time of birth, so we don't have houses or a rising sign. So we just start the chart at 0 degrees of Aries. Hello. But look at the Aquarius, Sun, Mercury, North Node in Aquarius. You know, who in the group's going to have an encounter with aliens? Well, you need a bit of that energy, you know, to have, you know, you could say this was his destiny. And also the planet Pluto. Remember, Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio. So he's horrified. You know, from his experience, he's looking at monsters because he has no way to relate to what he's seeing. And that's a very strong aspect of Pluto opposite the Sun in his chart. Now, let me interpret this. So what happened? Oh, what the hell is that Q? I'm trying to read Q2 cross D and remember what those codes stand for. But there was an activation of the planet Uranus on that date. Uranus was over here at 3 degrees of Scorpio, ruled by Pluto, trining his Mars. This planet down here, I think it's Chiron. Chiron was hitting Uranus, coming towards Uranus and hitting up here to the Mars. And right up there at the top, what the hell is that? Oh, that would be, I know what it was. The North Node, again, if this is just like too much for some of you who you just haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, it's fine, but just if you can get the gist. The North Node was square his Sun, and the Sun was square his North Node on the day to his Aquarius North Node and so on. So there's an it's like a destiny activation. Bang. Things align all at once, they come in all together and say, this is the moment.
So did you say you don't have his birth date? So this is
I don't have his birth time.
You don't have his birth time. Oh,
But this is his
you said
date.
You didn't have his birth date, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, how could you know
What?
this? No, it's his date, I don't have the
Oh,
time.
you just don't have the time. So does that change much about the situation?
No, these transits will still be exactly the same, but we have another extra layer of information with the time of birth. Yeah. And when I'm looking, I can often find a date of birth. If I'm looking for the whole chart with the time, I'll put his name, especially if it's someone who's pretty well known, I'll put his name in the search engine followed by the word horoscope. Because there's lots of great astrology big programs that have masses of charts in them, and quite often you'll find it if it's someone reasonably well known. So if I put the word horoscope, it's going to take me directly to an astrological connection. Okay. Oh, and what did he say? He said, it's kind of been my mission to see if I can help people to understand that this is real. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So he's come back, and having had to deal with all of that, and then he's got many interviews and speaking about. So the more people that speak about these experiences, the more it kind of feeds into the collective field of awakening reality about the truth of this.
So did he come back missing days? Or?
I think it was a matter of days.
I think it's about 4 or 5.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So that's him now.
No, that's.
No, you
No,
guys.
Oh, hang on. No, that's right. Whitley Strieber. That's right. I'm going this way. Now this is a woman called Sheryl,
Sheryl with an S.
who's given permission to use her chart. Yes. And Sheryl had an experience which you might be happy to sort of speak about. She doesn't remember the date, but she knows it was 1990-91. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So Sheryl has Aquarius rising, Venus in Aquarius, Chiron in Aquarius in the first house. So there's very strong Aquarian energy here. Uranus is over there opposite Chiron. You can see I've drawn a big cross in the middle, showing how these points are all strongly aligned and connected with each other in the chart. They connect to Neptune up there at the top of the chart, very strongly connected to the nodes. I'm seeing very often one of these outer planets, whether it's Chiron, Uranus, Neptune or Pluto, strong contact to the nodes, to the north or south node of the moon, indicating this is part of the destined pathway, right? So, and this is true, you have Neptune conjunct the north node and Uranus squaring both the nodes, and Uranus rules your chart. What else else is Sheryl going to do with her life but, you know, run the whole UFO research community in Queensland.
Because that was a close encounter experience.
Close encounter experience, yeah. So I was just looking in a general way, okay, so what was happening with the slow moving outer planets over that couple of years to sort of give us a general sense. And, oh, this is going to be fun because now we've got some, trying to remember what, and let me just quickly do a bit of mental, oh, this is very challenging. Yeah, we'll have to rectify this.
Maybe in the break we can put your laptop there so people can see.
Yes, and you can actually see what. But you know what I was seeing clearly. Transiting Uranus was on her Mercury. Now Mercury is in an Earth sign, Capricorn, very pragmatic, very evidence based, and Sheryl likes evidence. You know, she researches these things. But, you know, she wants it to be grounded and evidence-based and real and not just some kind of crazy idea. It can be a crazy idea, but, you know, where's the backup, right? Very Mercury and Capricorn. Uranus is on that Mercury, shifting perception and reality. Like, whoa, what the hell's this? Yeah? And Taurus South Node in the 4th house. So there's a groundedness here with that Mercury and Capricorn and this Taurus South Node. You know, she's very grounded with it. Yeah.
Didn't go off the deep end.
She didn't go off the deep end.
In fact, I told myself it was a hallucination for 15 years.
Right.
Wow.
And that it wasn't real. Yeah. That's right. And that can often happen with Neptune. It's like, was that real? Did I imagine it? Was it a dream? Was it that movie I saw last week that's just kind of triggered something? You know, is that real? Yeah, I'm not sure. That's right. And there was so Uranus is over there. There was what we call a solar arc progression. If we move that Uranus forward 1 degree for year of life, it actually hit the exact degree which was square to your sun during that period. So again, there's another. And because Sheryl is a Sagittarian, an 11th house Sagittarian, she's here to speak about these things and educate people about these things, but in a very Saturnian, grounded, real way, and very organised, very systematic, right? Keeping records. Yeah. So it's what people's life purpose is about related to these experiences. That gets really interesting. And how they become a facilitator of the awakening of humanity in their particular way. You know, so the more people you communicate these things to, the more people start going, oh, really? I might just do this one and we'll perhaps have a break. Yeah. Now this is a woman who's given, Sheryl knows, who's given permission to use her chart. I've left the birth details off and just put the first name there. Born in 1957, same year as Sheryl. She's an Aries. Pisces is rising. So already it's different. She's an Aries with Pisces rising. So Neptune's the ruler of the chart. So I've circled Neptune up there. It's in Scorpio in the 8th house. Neptune makes contact. Again, I'm going to do a bit of astrological jargon here. It has a purple line quincunx to the Sun and Mercury. It has another one over here to Mars in Gemini. It has a square Neptune square Uranus.
Wow.
Often this indication of someone who's potentially going to have experiences of a different level of reality, whether they're a channel, a healer, or they're having encounters, you know, this kind of thing, right? It might be, you know, profoundly psychic, this kind of thing. And there's another example of the nodes, the South Node's in Taurus. So she's born the same year as Sheryl, square Chiron in Aquarius, right? So I'm just trying to illustrate there are patterns, there are repeated patterns and themes and indicators that you will see that speak to these experiences. Now, my understanding from what Sheryl has told me is that Luna's had many experiences throughout her life. Is that true?
Not UFO experiences, but other. She's had out of body experiences and paranormal experiences.
Right. And she's given us the date and even the time of an event that occurred last year in March when she was driving out in the country road in the middle of the day.
Daytime.
Near
So
Charleville.
those lights that chase everyone out there got her.
The Min
The Min lights.
No.
This is a real UFO.
No, it was like a gaseous
Okay.
state. It just came down into a car.
And
Really
it
weird.
collided with her car. And she was aware enough to get a paint sample, and it was examined and not of this world. So Uranus was going through Taurus. Uranus, for these 7 years that we're currently in, this period is going through the sign of Taurus. And Uranus is shaking up the reality of grounded, practical, tangible. You know, at a basic level, Taurus is, I know this is real because I can see it, I can feel it, my senses tell me it's real, I can touch it, I can wear it, it changes the way I see. It's real. Anything beyond that can't possibly be real, right? So that's very fundamental Taurus. So Uranus is really shaking things up. Up here, Pluto. I know Pluto's that V.
I can't see from here.
Pluto squaring Neptune. I'm trying to remember what Y is. In Scorpio, what was that?
Well, with that Pluto squaring Neptune, that'd be that reality disintegrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as soon as you mentioned trauma, I thought, oh, there must be a Pluto component to this experience.
Yeah, she's still going through it.
Yeah. And Pluto was opposing Uranus and squaring Neptune.
So then last year.
Oh, it is opposite current.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my apologies, it's hard to translate. But you get the idea, right? And you can see the trauma of it is the Pluto component to it. And to Neptune, the ruling planet of her chart. So her whole sense of reality has been really shaken up.
Absolutely.
And she's a sensitive. She has Pisces rising. She's a sensitive person. And Neptune is in Scorpio in the 8th house, the ruling planet of her chart, square Uranus. She is open to, prone to unusual psychic phenomena and experiences.
Yeah.
And that requires a lot of understanding and integration and grounding. You know, happily there's a Taurus South Node. That Jupiter is over there in Virgo. So there is some Earth here, which is helpful.
Yeah.
You know, because the Earth signs bring us back to physical reality. Feel your body, feel your breath, feel back into the physical, you know, back to Earth. For the integration.
The thing with her is that even though she has physical evidence that's been tested by a professional lab,
And she saw it and experienced
and she saw
it.
yeah, she's like she's struggling with that. You know, she's trying to find other things that it could be
To explain it.
to explain it away.
Could that possibly have not? How could that possibly have been real?
Cheryl, I was just thinking that the Saturn moon up in Sagittarius is similar to your Saturn sun
Yeah,
in terms of
Yeah.
how can this be real? I know what I feel,
absolutely.
but how can I
How can it
make
be
this
real?
real?
That's
yeah,
right.
and it's right up there with the MC.
And her
Yeah.
greatest concern is that even though she now has that evidence, that people will think she's a nutter.
Yeah,
That's her
exactly.
words.
Yes.
That's her words.
It's like the perfect
So,
storm.
did she first connect with you after this experience, or did you know her before?
No, I know.
She's come to you. Great,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so.
I mean, how good is it that people have somewhere to come to
Yes.
Makes sense
tell their
at all.
story and to,
And
yeah.
it's good to have a laboratory that will do all the work.
Yeah.
It's a small fortune to get a paper.
And then there will be certain therapists who will, we have one in the room who are well versed in helping people process traumatic experiences and certainly are open to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to be really important going forward, I think. It's very likely that on a large scale, humanity is going to go through some shocks in the coming years. And many people are going to need help because their sense of reality will be so shattered. It already is, but it's going to be so shattered.
It's finding that validation for people.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing I was going to say was I was approached by Women's Weekly last year in the article for an article,
Yeah.
and I included Lynn's story in that article, which was published this year. And the validation for her was she actually took it to her doctor and said, because she told her doctor about the experience, and he was like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
until she got the
Yeah.
results, the lab results. And then it went in the magazine, and she goes, look at this, he goes, wow. And so he, in turn, has now awakened to the whole
Amazing.
reality.
It's actually real.
That's amazing. That's
It is
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's by design.
Anyway,
So I'll just see what's after. Yeah. So
so we'll have a break.
I think we'll have a break there, and I'll put my laptop up so that we can actually see proper. Because there's dozens and dozens, and I don't want to run out of time. I want to sort of touch on near-death experiences too, and as I said, I do a lot of slides, and we can linger on each one for ages. So this will be very familiar to some of you. This is an event known as the Hill abduction. There's this American couple had an experience. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this in great detail, but Betty Hill and Barney Hill were a married couple in America, and they had an encounter with a UFO. And so if we come back here, this is the date of the encounter. Again, we've got a date, we've got a time, we've got a location. Yes, we have a chart. So this is beautiful. Now, they were abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire. The incident came to be called the Hill abduction and the Zeta Reticuli incident. So it's quite famous, you know, in this arena. So at the time, we have Chiron, the bridge between realities, and Chiron is also a powerful healing energy. So my sense of that, and Chiron was in very early Pisces, but very close to the South Node in Aquarius. The midheaven was in Aquarius at that time of the incident. Chiron really is a bridge to higher dimensions and realities, but it can also indicate pain and wounds and, you know, difficult, painful issues that we have. But Chiron is the great healer. He is the wounded healer archetype. To me, he's a very shamanic figure. He carries great medicine. And I do feel that Chiron will show up to be an important component of these kinds of charts. Yep. We have a bunch of planets over here in Capricorn in the 8th house. The 8th house is a challenging area of the chart, and certain planets there, and we have Saturn here, it's retrograde, Jupiter's retrograde, they're in Capricorn. This is quite strong, can certainly indicate an experience that's kind of heavy and a bit traumatic and difficult. And I think for them, a lot of the aftermath of the experience was probably as challenging as the experience itself. You know, they wouldn't have gone through an easy time of it. We're back in 1961. And then down here at the bottom, we've got the planet Uranus conjunct the North Node. Uranus conjunct the North Node, absolutely a very strong pointer to very unusual, sudden, sort of dramatic experience that, you know, shatters your known reality up until that point. So this is just how my mind works. I goes, okay, so remember all these very interesting movies that started to come out. So I go searching for dates when these movies are released. Star Trek, Star Trek, wow. Came out in 1966 when there was a conjunction. This is a very famous conjunction in the astrological world, a very powerful conjunction or coming together of two very slow-moving outer planets. These events don't happen very often. In Virgo, also conjunct the Sun and the Moon. Uranus and Pluto were both these outer planets. It was a huge time of change. Some of you were here, I remember it well, in the 60s. Massive time. Close Encounters came out in 1977, the very year that Chiron was discovered. When the moon was in Aquarius, when the moon is square Uranus and Venus. E.T. was released in 1982 when the moon was in Aquarius on that date. So the moon changes sign every 2.5 days. So these two movies are released when the moon's in Aquarius. Uranus is in Sagittarius, opposite Mercury, in Gemini. I remember when these movies came out, it was amazing. These are absolute movies representing aliens and ETs and encounters with them. William Shatner, who's a very interesting character, not only was he, the captain of Starship Enterprise, but he's been interested in these topics of unusual happenings, all his life. And he has Uranus conjunct his North Node in Aries, sextile Venus in Aquarius. So, that energy is going to show up in his chart. Dolores Cannon, many of you will be familiar with her. Uranus conjunct the North Node, conjunct the Sun in Aries. She's blazing new trails, opening up these other realms of consciousness. Now, we're not going to analyse this. This is just a lot of data. But it's to show that since the 50s, these slow-moving outer planets are all moving very slowly, and at certain times it's like they lock into place and form some kind of contact or alignment with each other. And as they do that, there's a period of a year or 2 or 3 where big shifts are going on the planet and in people's consciousness. These outer planets, these evolutionary entities, when they come into a conjunction or they're opposite each other or they're making a square aspect to each other, things are happening, things are changing, things are opening up. And 1955 to 61, a bunch of people, including Sheryl, were born with Chiron, the rainbow bridge to higher consciousness, and the wounded healer shamanic figure went through the sign of Aquarius, right? And those of you, particularly Sheryl, has a lot of knowledge. You'll be aware of what is going on in the UFO community and world at these different periods of time. Yep. And we go, oh yeah, that was when, da-da-da-da-da. And Uranus was opposite Chiron in Aquarius, and so on and so on. 1995, Uranus, the ruling planet of Aquarius, moved into Aquarius. Uranus is in a sign for 7 years. So it's only going to go through its own sign every 84 years. So in 1995, it moved into Aquarius. So that Aquarian energy is suddenly full on. And then 1998, Neptune moved into Aquarius, and it was there for 14 years. So those movements can really open up the field, for these unusual experiences of other dimensions of reality to start to open up in people's experience and in the collective field. Now the big news, of course, is, and it's one of the reasons we all happen to be here today, like why all of a sudden did Sheryl say, come and give a talk to the group on, death and dying and NDEs, and we end up talking about UFOs and ETs, and suddenly my whole astrological realm of interest has gone, boom! I put it down to this guy. Pluto has just moved into Aquarius. Pluto has a 250-year orbit. Spends many years in a sign. It's massive as we enter into now the Aquarian age, and we're birthing the Aquarian age. This planet is now moving into this sign. It's sitting at 0 degrees, and it will be here for the next 20 years. We're going to see some big things happening around all sorts of things to do with the consciousness and humanity in the world and our place in the universe, and not just UFOs and ETs and so on, but just so many things. It's about awakening, really. Now, if we talk about near-death experiences, oops, going backwards again. Does anybody here feel like putting up their hand if they've had a near-death experience? You don't have to, but I'm just curious. Yep, a couple of you. Okay. So, yeah. So a near-death experience, as we understand it, is someone clinically dies, but they come back. Yeah. And they have an experience on the other side, or, you know, beyond this life, but they return. And again, what the nature of the experience and how they then go on to live their life after it will depend on their own chart, their own life story, and what was going on astrologically at the time of the experience. Right? So everyone's experience won't be the same. So just a couple of things about this. From the near-death experience, I can't remember what RF stands for, reference or something, Research Foundation or something like that website. They define it as a lucid experience associated with perceived consciousness apart from the body. We're out of the body.
I think that shamans used to induce near-death experiences.
Right.
Back in
Still do.
past.
Yes.
Still do,
Yes, out of the body, yes.
Egyptians too, for the pharaohs.
Yes, there's so much of this stuff that I think will be coming to light in the coming decades. Yeah. Occurring at the time of actual or threatened imminent death. Yeah, the Research Foundation. A large number of near-death experiencers report that they felt one of the reasons they had their experience was because they had lost their way in life. Because of this, they required a major wake-up call, which is what their near-death experience provided with them with. A wake-up call does not turn formerly dysfunctional people, not suggesting that everyone who's had one of these was formerly dysfunctional. Well, maybe. We're all a bit dysfunctional at times, aren't we? Into healthy people. It gives them a story to share, a map to follow, and concrete ways to begin to tackle all the areas of their lives and personalities that may require deepening and healing. So, again, it changes your reality and perception, and can be, for many, a profoundly healing experience. I've got a great example of that coming up in a minute. I just like this. What if this life is the dream and when we die we wake up? Yeah. The Indian mystics always referred to this as Maya. You know, we're living in a world of illusion. There certainly is a lot of illusion, isn't there? So this is a very famous example. I've had her chart and read her story years ago. Anita Morjani. And again, we've got dates here. I don't have a time of birth, but I'm just working with the date of her birth, but I've got the date of the near-death experience. In April of 2002, she was diagnosed with cancer. After 4 years, her body, riddled with tumours the size of lemons, began to fail. In February of 2006, she slipped into a coma and doctors gave her hours to live. She entered another dimension. Yeah. In this otherworldly place, Anita experienced profound peace and love. She also learned many things about life and the laws of life, including how she had caused her own cancer. It just becomes clear. Then she was given a choice, stay on the other side or return to Earth. After being reassured that her body would heal itself if she returned, she chose to return and share with others what she had learned. To the amazement of her doctors, Anita woke up from her coma, and within weeks her body was fully healed. Anita's life is now filled with the depths and insights she gained while in other realms. She's quite famous. Many interviews. She is on lecture tour. She's written books and lots of videos about her. You can look into that. So this is just that's a picture of her there. This is the chart. We have no time of birth, but we certainly have a date. She was born in Singapore. She's a Pisces, right? So her experience is a Pisces experience. So when she left her body, as death happened, she experienced peace and bliss and love, right? And Pluto, it's a little bit hard to see, it's just right up there at the top. Transiting Pluto, transit meaning where it was at any given time, at the time of the death, was at 25 degrees of Sagittarius, making a hard square back to the sun. Pluto, the lord of death, right? Planet of death and endings, and rebirth and regeneration and transformation. Squared the Pisces sun. She's now having an outer body experience, which is such a Piscean kind of thing. The Pisces is not terribly attached to the body, actually. It's a bit nebulous, that attachment to the physical. And Pluto was also making a sextile aspect to Chiron at 24 of Aquarius, and making a trine aspect to Venus. So it's connecting with a lot of things. Over here, Chiron, the healer, is at 4 degrees of Aquarius squaring Neptune. There's another example of Neptune in Scorpio. It's a whole generation of people who were born with Neptune in Scorpio. Many of them are very psychically open. Chiron, square Neptune. Down here, transiting Saturn in Leo, squaring that Neptune. Neptune rules Pisces. She is a Neptunian. So she's having a death experience, but her experience on the other side is very Pisces and Neptune. It's very beautiful. It's very blissful. She's, back home in this beautiful place. But she's told if she chooses to return, don't worry, your body will be fully healed. So she makes that choice to come back. Many Pisces would just go, yeah, no, I'm out of here. Great opportunity. See ya. but no, she chose, because I would say something, her soul must have known that you have work to do. Come back and you can do what you need to do and help. And you will be fully healed. And just being fully healed, what a shock for the doctors. They don't expect things like that. That's going to shift their thinking immediately. Within weeks, her body is fully healed. You're going, what the hell? And I put a dotted line to show that this is not directly hitting her chart, but at the time, Neptune, the ruling planet of Pisces, is at 17 degrees of Aquarius, exactly conjunct Mercury, the mind, making an exact trine to Jupiter in Scorpio. Now, Jupiter is a planet that expands and is a very positive. And I used to notice, like this talk was originally going to be about death and dying. We can do that some other time, because I did a lot of research on that years ago. I started to notice why in all these charts of death, because I collect charts of death. Might sound a bit ghoulish, but I have Jupiter in the 8th house, so it's not ghoulish to me at all. And I'm going, why am I seeing Jupiter active? It doesn't make any sense. But I started to realise that Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius and Pisces, is about you're making a journey beyond. And very often, you might have heard the phrase, a good death. We're all going to die. And sometimes it's a good death, or it's a positive thing. Or even for the people left behind, it can be a very profoundly positive experience that helps them to grow. So we undertake a new journey. And so there was Jupiter right in the middle of Scorpio, the sign of death. making this square over here to Neptune. So that was part of the story as well, right at that time. And she's beautiful, isn't she? We don't realise that we're actually perfect just the way we are. We are born perfect, but spend a lifetime trying to be something we are not. And then we feel inadequate for failing. Your only purpose is to be yourself, otherwise you'll deprive the universe of who you came to be. So we could say she's actually become a spiritual teacher. And I remember years ago coming across a story, and I can't remember her name. If I did, somebody might know it. I would try and find her and look at that. A woman who was quite a successful model, very beautiful, had a horrendous car accident, body just broken, died on the operating table, went to, I forget the specifics to the light, or I can't remember exactly what happened, because people's versions of what they experience varies too, doesn't it? And I still can't, it was years ago, remember whether she was told to go back. Sometimes we read that people are told, no, you can't go past this point, you must go back, you have things to do, or they choose to turn and go back. She came back, she survived. They patched her up, but her face was disfigured. What it taught her was that, and then she started teaching about love and beauty, and it comes from the heart, it's got nothing to do with your physical experience. So she went through that experience for herself to understand that, and then to really teach that to other people. So it's interesting, isn't it, you know, to reflect on these things. If you've had a near-death experience, how did that change your perception? How did it change your life? How is it a part of how you live your life now? You know? And what was going on astrologically at the time of that experience, of that event? The astrology can give you a lot of insight about it. Our friend Carl Jung has something to say about it, because he had an experience himself, and I've just got a very brief version of it here. In 1944, he had a heart attack. He was skiing, because he's Swiss. Swiss.
Yes. Yep.
And he slipped on the ice and broke his leg, injured his leg. He's in hospital, and he ends up having a heart attack. And died. He's not even quite sure whether he actually died, but it was a near-death kind of an experience. His vivid encounter with the light, plus the intensely meaningful insights he received, helped Jung develop his ideas on the archetypes of the collective unconscious and how it relates to concepts found in astrology. There's a whole field of astrology. When I started teaching myself astrology way back, my go-to astrology guru was a woman called Liz Green, who was also a Jungian analyst, and knew all about Jungian's work and mythology, and just marrying all those together. So that was kind of a real foundation for me in my learning astrology. And so I knew from way back, you know, Jung was into all of these things. His experiences and knowledge led him to create the field of analytical psychology, and they don't teach him in psychology schools. Isn't that fascinating? It's all a bit too much. So this is the chart of the near-death experience. So he has so the inside circle, I don't want to move too much because okay, so the inside circle is his birth chart. So the ascendant is 3 degrees of Aquarius. He's a Leo. The sun is over there. We looked at his chart earlier, conjunct Uranus. The outside circle is where the planets were on that date of his experience. So I'm just highlighting a few things. Look at all the planets on that day in the sign of Aquarius, all over his ascendant. Now the ascendant represents the moment of our birth, and we only know your ascendant when we have an accurate time of birth. And it is literally a birthing moment. So lots going on in Aquarius. Pluto, our lord of the underworld, the planet of death and rebirth, is over here in Leo, sitting right between his sun and Uranus. The North Node's right there as well with it. And Uranus is down here at 4 degrees. I know this is a lot, but you just get the general sense. What I wanted to point out was Neptune is here conjunct Chiron. Neptune's at 3 degrees of Taurus, which is the Chiron degree. That's the degree Chiron was discovered at in 1977. Like, it just goes on and on. Astrologers are dot connectors, you know, like, you can get that and see all the connections. And up here, transiting Neptune at his near-death experiences at 3 degrees, exactly hitting that Neptune. The sun was going through Pisces. Now, his experience wasn't going to the light, it was different. It was a very mystical experience, but still, he said he kind of drifted up beyond the earth, but he didn't go out into other dimensions as such. And I know that's a lot of words, there's no way you're going to read all that, but to just give you the gist of what happened to him, he found himself floating 1,000 miles above the earth. Seas and continents shimmered in blue light, and Jung could make out the Arabian desert and snow-capped Himalayas. That's interesting to me, it was around the Himalayas. He felt he was about to leave orbit, but then, turning to the south, a huge black monolith came into view. It was a kind of temple, and at the entrance Jung saw a Hindu sitting in a lotus position. Within, innumerable candles flickered, and he felt that the whole phantasmagoria of earthly existence was being stripped away. It wasn't pleasant, and what remained was an essential Jung. The core of his experience, he knew that inside the temple, the mystery of his existence, of his purpose in life, would be answered. He was about to cross the threshold when he saw, rising up from Europe far below, this is really interesting, the image of his doctor in the archetypal form of the king of Kos. Now, I've been to the island of Kos in the Greek islands. It is a healing island where the temples of Asclepius, the Greek god of healing, is said to have resided. And he says he saw the archetypal form of the king of Kos, the island side of the temple of Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. He told Jung that his departure was premature. Many were demanding his return, and he, the king, was there to ferry him back. When Jung heard this, he was immensely disappointed, and almost immediately the vision ended. He experienced the reluctance to live. I think it might be easy for me to read from here. That many who have been brought back encounter. So perhaps some people are brought back, or no, maybe rather not. But what troubled him most was seeing his own doctor. So that figure that he saw as Asclepius, the god of medicine, actually was his own doctor in this world. In the archetypal form, he knew this meant that the physician had sacrificed his own life to save Jung's. On April the 4th, 1944, a date numerologists can delight in, Jung sat up in bed for the first time since his heart attack. On the same day, the doctor came down with septicemia and took to his bed and never left it, and died a few days later. Isn't that a wild story?
Yes.
And not one I'd come across until I came across something about, Jung and near-death experience, so I read it and just went, wow. Huh? Amazing. So then I thought, as you do, I came back and I looked at this, and I decided to put in an asteroid that I love to play with called Hygeia, who was the daughter of Asclepius. And that's that symbol. It looks like a caduceus, with the serpents. And we're seeing 3 degrees a lot in Jung's chart. Ascendant 3 degrees, Neptune 3 degrees. Hygeia the goddess of healing, daughter of Asclepius, 3 degrees. Transiting Neptune was at 3 degrees. Transiting Uranus was at 4 degrees. So again, there was another direct hit, and I went. So that's where intuition comes in. I just went, oh, where's Hygeia? Bingo. She's right there at the 3 degrees again. It gets so intriguing. Now, if anyone's interested, that first clip there is a YouTube. If you want to take a shot of that, anybody, that's a just a video of Jung talking about his experience on YouTube. Yeah. And the second one is from the jungiancenter.org, The Seduction of Death, Jung's Thoughts on the End of Life, and so on.
Give them a chance to get the cameras out.
Yeah.
So how do you marry up an event? So my partner had a near-death experience in 2020. So how do you marry up the event day to his birth chart? Is it something you do on the program?
Yes, that's what we astrologers do all the time. So you get the birth chart, and then you just create a second chart, which is the chart of the event.
Okay.
So you can create a chart of any moment
Okay.
to do with anything.
But you need his birth chart first, and then you
Yes.
put the...
And so if you don't have a time, sometimes people, they ask all the family, they phone the hospital, they look up records, people get born in all kinds of interesting situations. Hospitals burnt down, records are gone. Then you just work with the date, and that gives you a lot of good information. The time gives you the full story.
Yeah.
Right? So it's fine if there's no time of birth, sometimes it's just impossible. Yeah. Now, before we had computers, and I was doing astrology before we had computers, we did all this by hand with the use of our trusty ephemeris, the table that showed us every single day for the whole century where every planet was. So you'd work out of the book of tables. And you'd hand calculate and hand draw all the charts, which is how astrologers always did it. Technology now, it's put in the data, got a chart in a split second. It's great. So this is just an interesting question. I don't know, someone said that in a video I was watching. It was a conversation. During an NDE, where are we going? I mean, obviously we're going into other realms, other dimensions. Are we getting... I mean, I would imagine if you have a near-death experience of another level of reality that's obviously way beyond this one, you're going to come back seeing things in a very different way. And it may not be a near-death experience. Sometimes having a spiritual experience, or a number of them, in all sorts of ways we humans have those openings where our consciousness is expanded and blown open. And we're changed after that, and it's these outer planets, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, that really represent and facilitate that. It's just a lovely image. And that's just my details if anyone's wanting those. So I made it all the way through.